Shalom from Israel, I'm Ariel Ben Avram. We read this week Parshat Shemini, something like the number 8. It begins saying something like this in English. It was the 8th day. Moses summoned Aaron and his sons and the elders of Israel. Basically, the idea was to, as we said in last week's Parshat Tzav, in the commentary video, we said that for 7 days Moses officiated, was in charge of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, doing the sacrifices. But the 8th day, Aaron, his brother, and his children were consecrated to be in charge of the office of the tabernacle. Now, this is very interesting because the 8th day in Judaism is very, very, very significant. We will refer to that. We refer to that the circumcision happens in the 8th day. The consecration of the high priest happened on the 8th day. The completion of the process of the days in which these zealots were protecting the Temple of Jerusalem against the Assyrian Greek Empire. They were lighting. There was one bottle of oil that was supposed to last for 1 day, lasted for 8 days, not 7, 8. So we talk about the Hagit, the 8th day, as the day in which the light was fully revealed. So it's like there was a process in which we were lighting one candle a day until the 8th, which is all the candles are lit. And then it's like the process of illumination is complete. So it's like the 8th day represents a completion, but it's a completion beyond our understanding. That's why the Brit Milah, the circumcision, happens on the 8th day, meaning that in the 8th day the child have no real consciousness where he or she, he in this case, he is. Children in general, boys and girls, when they are few days born, they really have no clear consciousness about where they are. But they learned. In this case, as a baby boy, a Jewish baby boy, the 8th day is brought for the circumcision. So, 8th day, sages explain, the 8th day, the child doesn't have any idea, any conception about what's happening with his body. Just like in the same way that a baby of 8 days old, born, doesn't have any conception about anything, in the same way our conception, our understanding, our awareness of our connection with God is unconceivable. We don't have the capacity to understand it. Because it has to do with something eternal, something infinite. But interestingly, number 8, if you take the number 8 standing and you lay it down to the side, like put it to rest, the number 8 is the symbol of infinity. So it's quite interesting because our connection with infinity is beyond our consciousness. We cannot grasp infinity. We can't. Everything that we have is finite. It's like it will end somewhere. The universe and the creation of God will end somewhere. That's our conception because we are limited by time and space. It's a very normal reaction to know that everything has to have a limit because we know that we live within limits. In the frames of time and space. So then we have a problem here. because we have to be aware that we cannot conceive anything beyond our limits. Really. It's like, no matter how much we want to learn something about creation, about life, about existence, anything abstract in our brain, in our understanding, in our consciousness, there's a point in which we get to a point in which we find a wall, a limit, like a border. It's like, your understanding cannot pass before this. That's one of the problems that we have in physics now. Contemporary physics, quantum physics and all these theories that have been relativity, that have been discovered in the last 100 years. We really don't understand them. I mean, it's like we understand it through physics. There are laws that cannot explain them, but our human understanding cannot grasp those concepts, except in theory. And interestingly, they try to apply what these concepts, like relativity, like quantum physics, like leaps and dark holes and supernovas and quasars and all kind of things. In our consciousness, what that means in our consciousness. What is a quasar in my consciousness, our consciousness? What is being in one dimension and another at the same time? Is that possible? How can we be in two places at the same time? But in quantum physics, they prove that we can be in two dimensions at the same time. Not places in this case, but dimensions. It's like, how can we translate those abstract concepts in our consciousness? So how can we be in two dimensions at the same time? It's like, how can we be angry and happy at the same time? Or understanding something and not understanding something. It's like this dualism. Our consciousness is really limited by this dualistic approach to reality. Everything is either or. It's positive, negative, good or bad, false, correct, raw, cooked. It's like we live like in a dualistic approach to reality. We cannot understand anything outside those. So that we cannot be in two places at the same time. Suddenly, someone comes with a theory that this is possible. But how we do that? Well, in theory we can. Of the relativity of time. We can understand, and we get to a point in which we can understand about relativity of time. That the time passes at one particular pace, so to speak, track or way in this material world, this planet, and outside it, it's a whole different thing. It's completely different. It's not a clock, basically. It cannot be measured by a clock. It's like a second or something like that. It's a different way. So we don't understand certain things. Our mind is not designed to understand things beyond the seventh day. Now, once we get to the 8th day, we have problems. Problems to understand, to assimilate, to grasp, meaning to control at some point. It's like, now we know what that is, so I can do something about that. Because now I understand that I'm going to manipulate it and put it in my service, to serve me, serve my purpose, my agenda. It's like, when we get out of there, it's like, where are we? We don't know where we are. Or what is it? We don't know what that is. How does it feel? We don't know how it feels. The references are completely lost. We lost our references once we enter infinity. It's a whole different thing. We don't even know what it is. We just have a symbol. In mathematics, we use it. There's an infinite conception in terms of quantity. but only in the abstracts of mathematics, algebra, whatever, calculus. It's like once we get to the 8th day, we are entering really to a real dimension in which there are no references for us to understand anything that is going on. We have to be there, and once we get there, then we will know there and then what's going on. And there will be no past reference. In other words, if we come back from that stay here, we have no recollection of that. Because the references are different. The images, probably there are no images there. Symbols that we can hold on, that we can use to understand something. There's none. So this is the 8th day, the consecration of our connection with God, represented by the high priest. So then we realize the lesson of the Shemini, of the 8th day, is like, hey, when you're connected with God, you're beyond understanding. Because it's God. In Judaism, God has no definition. So that once we enter in contact, unquote, we say unquote because that would be contact with something undefinable, then we will be there in its terms. We don't know them because there is no definition of God. So then we have a brit, we have a pact that we formalize in the circumcision, through the circumcision, with the circumcision. And it's an eternal pact throughout the Jewish generations. We really don't know what that is. Yeah, the Torah tells us, we have an alliance, a covenant with God. He will give us a land, we will realize, we will perform, we will realize, we will practice, we will execute God's will based on the Torah. That's the reference we have. And that's the pact. But actually, the moment that we have an alliance, a connection with God, it's infinite. It's beyond just being and doing things in the material world based on what the Torah is telling us to do, to be, and to have. Really. So it's like, let's think about that for a moment. It's like, we have a brit, we have a pact, a covenant with God. With God. So nothing less and nothing more. What that is, we don't know. But we have it. And it's having some kind of effect in our consciousness, either if we're conscious of that or not. It's regardless if we're conscious or not. This is regardless. Our relationship with God is regardless everything. Why? Because that regardless is infinity, it's eternity. So it's quite interesting, all these things about the 8th day, because when we're talking about the priest who is connecting us with God, it has to happen in the 8th day. It cannot happen in any other day. It makes perfect sense. Like the Brit Milah, like the circumcision on the 8th day. And like Hanukkah, the last light of Hanukkah, it's like the completion. It's like, I'm with you. I'm the 8th light. I mean, the completion of all lights is God. And He's with us in the temple, regardless what the Assyrians and the Greeks and the Romans do. He's there. And the oil will last 8 days, meaning the whole time, the infinity will last infinity. It will last towards infinity, until infinity. As if infinity has limits, it's no limits. So this is the beginning of Shemini. So let's pay attention to this. Like, okay, the 8th day is like, why wasn't the 7th? So in this sense, the 7th day Shabbat It's actually the entrance of to the 8th day. That's why Shabbat is for Jews. It's the entrance. Like 6 days, the material world. 7th day, God. 8th day, we don't know. But it's there, it exists, we can see it. There is an 8th day. Yeah, but in the beginning, in Bereshit, in the book of Genesis, talk about only 7 days. Yes, but there's also 8 days. Shemini, we read this Parshat, we know that 8. That is an 8th day. Not 9th or 10th, 8. And then we start thinking, it's like, when we enter that infinity, it's like, once we get to Shabbat, it's like we are at the door of the 8th day. The references change completely. We don't know them because we don't know God. So this is a lesson to teach us that our consecration, or the consecration of the high priest, is our individual consecration of our higher awareness of knowledge or connection with God permanently. It's like we are our own high priests in our consciousness. What is the high priest in our consciousness? The highest awareness we may have, knowledge we may have about God. In this case would be something like about what is spiritual. It's like what is the most sublime consciousness, the thing that we have in our consciousness, the best, the most pure. We will talk about purity later in this portion. It's very important. We'll get there. It's like that's the higher awareness, the higher consciousness. So we have to tune in. We have to let that higher consciousness lead all aspects of our consciousness. And we have said last week, we said that love, as the material manifestation of God's love, is what we should let ourselves be led in terms of what we think, what we feel, what we speak, what we do. In this case, we're talking about our connection with God. God has no definition, but He tells us how He relates to His creation. And that's love, loving kindness, truth, grace, mercy, compassion. Those are attributes of goodness. Those are attributes of God, of love, love. It's like God is not love. It's not nothing. It's no definition of God. But the Torah is telling us He is relating to us with these references, these qualities, these attributes. And then we relate, we conceive God from these attributes, through these attributes. And how we relate, about how we are kind, how we are loving, how we are graceful, how we are patient, how we are merciful. That's exactly the attributes that through which we relate to God. So like that's the way He is, we have to be like Him. We have to emulate Him. Besides, we come from Him. So all those attributes are part of our spiritual genetics and physical genetics also. That we have this trends toward goodness, in the same way that we have trends towards negative things. Then you choose goodness. We choose goodness. Okay, let's keep reading. We spoke enough about the 8th day. So anyway, there was a sacrifice in order to consecrate the priests. So then this is very important, the priest is commanded to bless the people of Israel. So we 3 days a week we are blessed by the Kohanim, by the priests. May God bless you and protect you. May God shine His face on you and give you grace, make you graceful. May Hashem, God, elevate His countenance on you and may put peace on you. What's the priestly blessing? It's 3 blessings. It's like how we are blessed. I mean, what is the meaning of being blessed by God and being protected by God? Being shone by God and reflect the gracefulness that He put on us. And how God elevates His face, His countenance on us, like elevates Himself in us and puts peace on us, in us. This is about really, the blessing is about being connected with God. That's the function of the priest. The awareness of our permanent connection with God. That's why these blessings are related to the connection. It's about shalom, the completion. It's about light. It's about being radiant. It's about elevated to the radiance of God, the grace of God, the elevation to be close to God. And finally, peace. And this is within the context of being protected by Him. It's like if God radiates His countenance on us, what would be against? So we are protected. So like, it will make you graceful. So I would say, what is grace? Grace is the quality that makes people react positively towards. In other words, when we see grace, we like it. We smile, and it's an admiration. It's like if He wants us to reflect gracefulness, people will like us, basically. It's like He's blessing you and He's protecting you. It's like He's shining His face on you, so you would be graceful. So people will like you when they see the radiance of God in your face. People will like you. So you be graceful. This grace is about, become likable. When you say that a person is graceful or has grace, it's like we like the person. Some artists, singers, the people they are grace. That's why they have so many fans. Because they find something that we don't judge. It's like these people are good, they're nice, they're full of grace. I mean, they're graceful. So we like them, no matter what they do, no matter how they look, we like them. It's like they irradiate gracefulness. This is part of the blessing here. And the last is like elevate, the last one is again, may God elevate His countenance in you. It's like how God is going to elevate His face on me. See, elevate. It's not He could have said, may the countenance of God reflect on you. I mean, like you basically would reflect what God is. It's basically, the generalization, elevate his countenance in you. So it's like God is in an elevated place in our consciousness. It's not like for everybody to see, like you look like God or you are like God. No. It's like you have to elevate. It's like a banner. Izar, it's interesting because it's the same verb in Spanish. Izar is like when you elevate, the flag, you raise the flag. It's the verb. So it would be like a banner, like the banner of God is like on top of us. Like he elevated his countenance, his face in us. It's like a banner. It's like this guy is with God. That's what it means. It's like a banner, like a flag. Would people see it? No, he's elevating the banner in us. I mean, he's for people to see. It's like he elevated you. It's like, what for? I mean, there's a purpose. People could see this is a man of God. It's a woman of God. It's blessed by God. That's the priestly blessings. It's the blessings of our connection with God. That's what the priest represents. So let's be reminded that we have to keep this closeness, this connection with God permanently. As we said last week, the fire has to be there, lit permanently. This connection with God have to be permanent. These blessings, these priestly blessings have to be permanent. Not just 3 times a week. It's permanent. Let's embrace them. Let's embrace this God that's the essence from whom we came from and towards where we're going. We're going to Him. We are returning to our Creator. We are returning to our Creator. That's what we hear. When we get here, we got to return. The returning is a continuing process in which once we return, meaning that one, He and I are together, one. Now, we don't have to wait until we die. Then we can reveal His presence, His Shekinah, His goodness in the world. That's the whole purpose of being us here. Okay, let's continue. So after he said that he blessed after he was consecrated, Aaron, the high priest, he blessed the people. Then after that, there's an interesting episode narrated in this portion, Shemini, about the two songs. He had 4. There were 2 songs of Aaron. The names were Nadab and Abihu. So they say that they, just to paraphrase what the Torah says, they were lighting an strange fire. And they died because of that. Like, God told them, you have to officiate in the tabernacle in a particular way. They basically changed the way. So there are 2 major explanations that our sages give in the Talmud, which is very, very interesting. And also our sages elaborate a lot on that. And the opinions are completely opposed. Completely opposed to each other. So he said that they were really tzaddikim, they were saints, these 2 guys. They were like young people. They were so saintly, so pure, so dedicated to God that they decided to be too close to Him. It's like, we don't want to be in the material world. We want to be with You. So they brought this strange fire, alien fire, what kind of fire would be an alien fire? Also, you say this is the way they were doing things. That's what it means. That they were not following according to what God told Moses to tell them. So they ended up doing the things the wrong way. But again, the positive approach in this case is that they were very good people, very good human beings, very close to God, to the point that they say, we want to be united with you. And God says, sure. But you're not going to be able to live. So you say, no problem, we die. So they died. Now, the other one, the opposite, the completely opposite opinion of our sages is that these people were extremely arrogant, really. They didn't want to get married because there was no women, fit enough for them. That they really was like big egos. It's like, oh, my father is the high priest, we're going to be also priests, and you guys, Israel, you have the rest over there, and the Levites are the one who carry the things, we're the big shots. And the selfishness and the pride and the haughtiness of these two gentlemen was so extreme that there was a point when they came to the tabernacle, they basically brought the alien fire. Like, okay, we're gonna do it our way. Forget about what Moses said. Forget about what God says. We're gonna do it our way. And God said, hey, that doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. If you do it that way, you will die. And they died. So of course, most of us believe the first version. I mean, why they have to be bad people? I mean, the father was nice. Their uncle was very nice guy, Moses. So why would it be that that arrogant, that bad, So they basically were very, very pure, very, very dedicated to God, and he said, I'd rather be, we don't want to be here. And God basically said, okay. So the alien fire in this case is something that we are. The fact that the Torah is not defining what kind of fire was has the answer, is the answer. Meaning, we are not approaching God in the way He wants us to love Him. It's like we cannot love God our way. This is our way to love God. The Torah is telling us. It's fulfilling His commandments, emulating His ways and attributes. That's what it's about. That's the whole point. So everything different than that is alien. It's strange. Let's reflect about that. A lot of people, when they pray, they say, when they speak, they say, oh my God, this is my God, and they have like this personal relationship with God, and they have actually, what they have is their own version of God. The version that accommodates to His desires, to His dreams, to His wishes, their wishes. So we have to be careful about what we ask for and the way we do it. It's interesting because praying in Judaism is not about asking anything. And we have said in previous commentaries, I think that we have said it in the blog, we have mentioned this many times. The verb to pray in Hebrew, leitpalel, is a reflexive verb. It's like bathing, like brushing, It's a reflexive thing, like seeing ourselves in the mirror. So let's think about that. This is an interesting reflection. You say, how can we do a reflexive action when we are praying to God? So imagine praying like bathing ourselves. or cleaning ourselves or dressing ourselves. How we do that? It's quite challenging, you know. It's like usually it's some kind of intransitive or way, like we're praying to God. He's there, we hear, or somewhere else, yeah, we hear. And it's like sort of one-way street kind of thing. It's like us elevating our prayers to Him, end of the story. That's how our consciousness may understand it, may assimilate it. It's like we're in front of God, you know, He's somewhere away here. So how are we going to, how do I integrate prayer in my consciousness? This is to be like I'm elevating and telling something to God. I'm blessing Him. But how I can get blessed by the action of blessing God? That's exactly the point of the reflexive action of prayer in Judaism, in Hebrew in particular. This is very interesting. Because we're doing something, while we pray, we're doing something to us, not to God. When we bath, we're bathing our bodies, we're not bathing somebody else. It's us, it's for our own benefit, it's like for us, it has to do with us. So it's not necessarily have to be like, God, give me, give me, give me. You know, we basically, the Jewish prayer is about recognizing God, acknowledging God as the source from where everything comes, including us. And we bless Him. We bless Him for that. For being what He is, or what He defines or presents Himself to us. And then we integrate that in our consciousness. And 19 blessings. It's like so Jerusalem is the gathering of the exiles. Rain, knowledge, understanding, sacredness, thankfulness, gratitude, redemption, peace. It's like it had to do with us. So these two gentlemen, you know, Nadav and Abihu, basically, they were doing the things in their own way. There is a way to do things. That the way God wants us to do, it's like, we are His creation. Why are we going to do things that way? He designed us to be in a particular way. We rebel because we have free will, because we can do whatever we want. Yes, of course. But are we choosing right? Just take a look around in the world and you will see we're choosing right. Are we making the right choices? I have to reflect on those things. Anyway, these two brothers basically were killed by the strange fire that they were offering, elevating to God. And after that, interestingly, our sages say the Torah if the Torah juxtaposes one passage with another, it has a reason. So after the death of these brothers, Nadab and Abihu, the following paragraph is about warning about intoxicants, things that alter consciousness. In this case, the Torah specifically is talking about intoxicating wine. It's like a wine that will make you drunk, basically. So they immediately make the connection. If this passage is juxtaposed to the death of Aaron's first two sons, it's because probably they were drinking when they were doing it. That's one opinion, of course. We're just saying what our sage is saying. We're quoting here. So then there's another lesson. See, after the death, God is telling us, do not, or telling the priests in this case, do not intoxicate. Do not drink intoxicating wine. What is the lesson behind this? It's very clear. We don't have to be priests in order to apply this into our consciousness. It's very clear. We must not alter our consciousness in our relationship with God. And it shouldn't be the same in our relationship with people. And altering consciousness is not only because the Torah is referring here to intoxicating wine, it means anything that will alter our consciousness. That means marijuana, that means cocaine, that means amphetamines, that means PCP, whatever. It's altering our consciousness. Period. So the issue is here is not if it's good or bad, or hashish is good or bad, or it's good for the health or anything like that. It's meaningless. The idea is that it's altering our consciousness. We're supposed to be sober in our relationship with God. Sober. So don't come here drunk or high or anything like that. Just be yourself. Be natural. You don't have to alter your consciousness with anything. Be yourself. Be conscious. Clear yourself with that doesn't alter anything of who you are, your essence and true identity. That's the message. Yeah, but the Talmud says that they don't mention anything about hashish, anything about marijuana, anything about amphetamines, anything about opium. Therefore we can do whatever we want. It's an opinion. We're not here to make judgments. We're here just to be bottom line. What is the bottom line here? Do not intoxicate yourself. Meaning, do not alter your consciousness. Oh, but the Torah is talking about wine. It happens to refer to wine. Maybe because in those times there was no opium, there was no marijuana, there was no hashish, there was no morphine or anything like that. Maybe. We don't know. But again, the point is not to make a judgment against people who smoke pot or not. The fact is, like, if you're relating yourself, I mean, you're making a relationship with God or something that you appreciate, that you have some kind of respect, value, appreciation. Be sober with it, or him or her or them. That's the point. Does it make sense? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's like it could be common sense, but again, some people say that common sense is the least common of the senses. So we have to be careful about that. But in this case specifically, it's like do not come to officiate in the tabernacle intoxicated, drunk, basically. So the lesson here is like how sober are we with which we appreciate. Like our spouses, our children, close friends, the environment. So at what point, when is the moment in which we decided to alter reality and feel different because the way we're feeling now is not the way we want to be? It's like, well, I feel depressed, I feel bored, I feel that I need some kind of, get me high, that kind of thing. Then the question would be, why don't you do it yourself? What do you need? A device or a means to do that? Why do you need to smoke anything or take something or inject something? Why? No, that makes me feel better. Can you feel better by yourself? Can you control your emotions, your feelings, your passions, your instincts? in order to respect the dignity of life, the dignity of yourself, the dignity of goodness. We're not saying that being high is not good. It's the reason behind getting high. What's the point? What happened afterwards? Do you really need something temporary in order to feel temporarily? Or you want to be coherent, you want to be balanced, you want to be high all the time? Then we have to get to the spiritual high, really, like the permanent awareness of our connection with God, for instance. That being led by love's ways and attributes in what we think, what we feel, what we speak, what we have, and what we do. It'll be great. It's like keeping an eye, permanent vigilance about love, permanent vigilance about God, permanent vigilance about goodness. It's like I want only goodness, love, and God's presence in my life. Every moment, all the time. That's being spiritually high all the time. It's great. It is. It's like studying Torah. You're just studying. It's like you get such a high, really. We experience that. Most of us who study Torah experience that. Is that we forget about time and space. We're just reading and learning, and time passes. We like entering a different dimension. I feel this fulfillment, this happiness. It's hard to describe. It's like some sense of plenitude, fullness. It's great for hours. Anyway, so be careful with intoxicants if you are going to officiate in the temple. Then after that, they talk about the offerings. Then suddenly, again juxtaposed, they talk about the laws of kashrut, kosher, to keep kosher. This is very, very important part of this parasha. Let's take a look about the rest, because if there's something important to mention, we don't want to only talk about kosher. Let's see. Yeah, actually, it from chapter the entire chapter 11 of Vayikra, the book of Leviticus, is dedicated to kashrut, the laws of kosher. Keeping kosher. And it's interesting because it's again within the context of the high priest, the tabernacle, and the offerings. So it's related. Now sages elaborate a lot. This is very, very important, because they say, hey, what you put in your mouth is exactly the same thing what you bring into the temple. It's like you bring a kosher animal, which we have to bring kosher animals as offerings into the temple. Same thing we have to put in our mouth. What we offer to God, kosher, is the same thing that we have to ingest while we eat. Now, this is basically the context of the temple, the high priest, and the offerings. Kashrut in that context. Let's take kashrut in a deeper way, which is why don't we eat pork, for example? Why we don't eat iguanas? Why we don't eat a horse or a camel? Why we don't eat a snake? Why we don't eat an eagle or a vulture? We will talk about that. I'll simply say that these animals represent particular qualities traits that we should not have, must not have in our consciousness. In other words, our consciousness is an empty vessel. Whatever we put there, that's what we are. What we put in the vessel of our thoughts, what we think is what we are. What we feel in our emotions, that's what we are. And ultimately, what we say and what we do, that defines us. This guy is wicked, but the way he speaks, he does. Because we don't know what he's thinking, he or she. But we know by his words and by his deeds. Then this thinking, these emotions, and these actions are the expression, so to speak, the manifestation of what some animals represent. So, for example, we take the vulture, for example. It's a rapacious bird. It's ruthless. The qualities in eating dead animals, the way they prey on other animals, that we don't want to be. We don't want to steal the body of a person or possess the body of a person and destroy it and devour it. And we're not talking about being cannibals. We're talking about preying on other people's consciousnesses, other people's beings, other people's characters. So we cannot be rapacious animals in our approach to life, our approach to relationship, our approach to others, our approach to our environment. They're predators. Like a shark. We cannot eat shark. It doesn't have scales. It has to have scales. It's like the fish with scales, kosher. There's something positive about them because of the scales. The ones without the scales, they have different quality. They are predators. So, you have to be careful about that. So it's like what a shark does. Maybe we see these movies about, animated movies. No, documentaries about sharks. We know what kind of animals are those. We don't supposed to eat them because we don't want to be like them. That doesn't mean that if you eat shark, you're gonna die, you're gonna get intoxicated, you're gonna get sick. It's about what the animal represents. Pork, for instance. We don't want to be pigs. We don't want to be called pigs. It's like the lowest feelings, passions, instincts. They will eat everything. It's like there's no discernment. There's no reasoning behind eating. And you see that the shape of the animal also is like, the head is down, it's looking down, it's not looking up. It's like this all the time. When we talk about other animals like the reptiles, iguanas, snakes, lizards. Why? Because they are reptiles. I mean, they creeping animals. They creep. They're close to the dust. It's like they're closest to the lowest, which is the soil, the surface. So that's the lowest. The lowest we have here is the floor. Below that, there's nothing. That's it. That's the limit. The lowest in relation to whatever the air. So whatever animal is creeping, it's the lowest. It's like the lowest stage of consciousness. We don't want to be there. Therefore, we don't need ants, we don't need roaches, we don't need lizards, we don't need snakes or iguanas. It represents creeping. So, that's the whole idea behind kashrut. Now, so you say, if you eat those animals, you will become like them. So, like, based on what they say that, I mean, how can they prove that I will become a pig if I eat pork? You figure it out. It's like some people who are not Jews watching this video say, what's wrong with pork? You know, I eat pork every day. I have no problem with that. In our tradition as Jews, we believe that people who eat pork, they have something about being a pig. We believe that. Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with an animal. It's just a nice animal. It's very intelligent. We don't believe that. It's like mixing dairy with meat. We don't. They're like opposite qualities. It's like the verse in the Torah says, you don't want to cook the kid, calf, in its mother's milk. It's like, it's like cooking an animal in part of its own nature. In Judaism, that is not acceptable. And also there are laws about compassion. So we see the eggs of a bird, want to eat the eggs of a bird or pigeon. We have to chase away the mother first so she doesn't see that we're picking her eggs. It's a major fundamentals. One of the fundamentals of Judaism, compassion. We don't do those things. So we have said before, the whole idea about the Torah, the whole idea about Judaism is ethics. It's from Bereshit, from verse 1 of the Torah to the end of Malachi, the last of the prophets. It's about doing goodness for the sake of goodness. That's the whole point. So the Torah is specific with Jews. These are laws for the Jews. These are not for everybody. So we follow this. So we don't need these things. Now, other warning in this Parshat that we have to refer to, is very, very, very essential also, is that the coin should not get close to a dead thing, a dead carcass, a dead person or a dead animal. Cannot get. Why? It gets contaminated. It becomes impure. You say, well, what's wrong? He's dead. You happened to touch it when he was walking or whatever. Or there's a deeper meaning on this. Not just meaning, lesson. And that's one of the reasons why Judaism is about life. That's what Judaism defends, promotes life, defends life, protects life, dignifies life, honors life. Why? That's the reason why we don't get close to dead animals or dead people. That's the meaning. It's like death is a very serious issue in Judaism as well as life. They don't combine. They don't mix. So the moment we touch something dead, a carcass, we're contaminated with partially dead. We are. Yeah, but we're still alive. The idea, again, is to emphasize in the meaning of being in contact with a dead body. We shouldn't be in contact with death whatsoever. We're alive, therefore we have to be in contact with something that represents life, honors life, protects life, enhances life. That's the purpose. So after that we have to go to a mikveh, we have to go to the ritual immersion in order to clean ourselves from death. It's the same principle of the menstruant woman. We're commanded not to touch a woman who is menstruant. Why? Because she's dealing with something dead during the days when she's bleeding. It's very deep. So we don't touch, we don't get physical contact with a menstruant woman because of that. The ovulum, the vital cell of the woman that has to be germinated, germinated by the seed of the man, is life, as well as the seed of the man also is life. So we're not supposed to spill the seed. And in the case of a woman, when her seed, after being ripe to be germinated, fertilized, start dying. So in that process, she's carrying something dying in her body until she expels it. We have to wait. Certain amount of days before we touch our spouse, because she has been dealing all these days with death. We have to pay attention to death in Israel, death penalty, for instance. We have said many times, and we will read that eventually. We will talk about that later in future upcoming portions of the Torah, the penalty of karet, which was excision, expulsion of the person from the community. Also, you say that was like a death penalty. The person was dead for the community, was out, didn't exist anymore, didn't belong to the community anymore. Why? Because what this person did, the sin, the transgression the crime that he or she committed, was in direct contradiction to the laws of life among the community. So he represented death, therefore he or she was dead, meaning expelled from the community. So we see that the consecration of the Kohen, of the high priest in Shemini, the 8th day, has certain provisions, certain laws that we have to pay attention to carry, especially the Kohen. Cannot be in contact with death, he cannot eat improper animals, and this applies also to Israel, by the way, the kashrut laws. And again, it had to do with what we offer to God. We're not going to offer to God the vulture in us, or the shark in us, or the lion in us, or the wild beast in us, the alligator in us. He asks us to bring something that is potentially good, pure, not destructive. Something that we can lead, that we can shepherd, like a bull, like a goat, like a dove, like a sheep. It's kosher animals. And we offer that to him. It's like, hey, my potential goodness, I elevate to you. Please, God, elevate myself to you so I could be close to you. So in that process, we don't bring garbage. We don't bring anything negative, any negative or destructive trend in consciousness, in our relationship with God or with anybody, ultimately. So let's understand kashrut, keeping kosher in that way. And again, let's translate kosher beyond the animal and the food that we eat. Let's apply kosher to every level of consciousness. Kosher in our thoughts, in our discernment, in our feelings, in our emotions, in our passions, and our instincts. Let's treat ourselves kosher, and let's treat others kosher, meaning with the goodness, what is ritually apt, ritually adequate to share. And that ritually purity, this ritually adequate, this ritually proper, apt, is goodness. It's the goodness of God's love. It's the goodness of love's. Love as the material manifestation of God's love. That's kosher. Love is kosher. Evil is not kosher. Wickedness is not kosher. The qualities of the rapacious, destructive, wild animals. So we hope that we get some of the basics about Shemini. We hope that we learn how to categorize our consciousness, categorize our emotions, our feelings, our thoughts, in order of goodness, and maybe for the sake of goodness, with the purpose of goodness. That's who we are, that's where we come from, and that's where we're going, as we embrace goodness, obviously. So we wish you an abundantly blessed week. Shabbat Shalom. And until next week.